Okay, so we're now live on Facebook. Good evening.
Good evening. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you, and we've decided to spend tonight, when it is glorious outside.
I know, yeah, talking about social value.
I'm going to apologise that I decided that today was one of the wonderful, most bright and sunny days of the year, and I blagged you into doing this for us instead. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's fine.
So we're live in the Consult Centre group, and I know we know what's going to happen next, but we probably better tell people that are watching. So, first of all, we're going to spend about half an hour or so, and we're going to go through some really free training that you've very kindly put together for us. But for those people that don't know you, do you want to just introduce yourself and a little bit about what you're going to do?
Just about what we're intending to do. So I'm Claire Louise Chapman, and I'm a social impact consultant. And today we're going to be talking about embedding values within your business practices. So a lot of what I do as a job is a little bit techie, but underpinning that is actually our values. So the things that we care about, the people and places that we care about, and we're going to be talking about the practical ways to actually make sure that's reflected by your business and you're talking about it effectively.
Okay. And people can ask questions if they're watching this now.
More the merrier, absolutely.
Super. Okay. And in terms of yourself as a business and your background, for those people that are watching, do you want to give a little bit of background stuff? I mean, I might be jumping ahead on your slides, so you can tell me off if I am.
No, to be honest, the slides are kind of just kind of crack straight on into what we're talking about in terms of values. So the shared value business is a year old now. So I started it last year. My background is quite eclectic. So I've worked as a corporate responsibility manager for a global energy company. And I've also worked in the third sector, so the charity sector, for a long time. I've run a couple of business membership organisations. One of them is the Lancaster Chamber of Commerce. And really, so in terms of kind of my skill set, it's understanding those big social pictures and social need, but also understanding how businesses work. And what I'm really interested in is how the two come together to really make a difference to the things that we care about. So that's what the business was set up to do, really, support businesses to do that.
So when you say it's set up to support businesses to do that, do you do that in a consultancy type way? Do you go in and assist and help and understand that, and then because it's great, isn't it, for businesses to say we're involved in the local community, we support charities, but that doesn't necessarily encompass everything to do with that area, does it? So it's
I think there's a number of reasons why businesses would get involved with me. So yes, I operate on a consultancy basis. I'll do one-to-one. I'm also developing training programs. So what I realized is that I've worked as a corporate responsibility manager, and it's great for those big businesses that can afford to employ somebody with that specialism. But what happens is SMEs, smaller businesses, everybody's a bit of you're just trying to, I've been there and I've got that t-shirt, you're kind of trying to do everything. And so what, the support that I do is that you just buy me in. I'm not an overhead cost. I'd come in, we talk about your values, we sort out a social impact policy, you understand what you're doing. So really that's the support that I give. So for some businesses, there's quite strong procurement drivers, and for some businesses it's about values, and it's about making sure that the things that they care about that they're doing the best that they can do, and looking at those systems and procedures. And I think one of the really key things at the moment is, I kind of come onto this in a bit, but what we're seeing at the moment with the situation with COVID-19 is that we have seen smaller businesses absolutely pull out all the stops to support their local communities. So we've seen business lending, people, lending equipment, lending vans, doing deliveries for vulnerable people, changing their production to be making hand sanitizer, PPE, and it's amazing that that is a complete demonstration of how businesses care about their local communities, and it's so businesses do this all the time. It's actually the social impact bit of it is how you do that in a structured way within your organization to make sure that your efforts are giving the most benefit that they possibly can. And also there's loads of procurement drivers with contracts nowadays. So it's a double benefit, really.
And when you talk about procurement, that could
Yeah.
be, for some people, some of what you're going to go through tonight could be an absolute prerequisite to be able to tender for business, couldn't it? So I know from my corporate background that there were several times when if you didn't have this kind of stuff documented, detailed, and actually you could explain why you'd made the choices you'd made, you might not win business with some other either a larger business or a very locally focused business, because it could be anything from they want to ensure that X amount of revenue is being driven back into local economy, for example,
to support in particular skills development. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when I talk about that techie side, that's the kind of the more technical stuff that I get involved with, which are called, their social impact indicators. So again, I was kind of I was going to come on to talk about this, but all public sector is now required through a very small act of legislation that came through a few years ago called the Social Value Act. But all public sector, any public sector procurement is now really required to write social value into contracts. So within your scoring, there will be some. So Greater Manchester authorities are writing up to 30% in. Other people, it's 5%, but essentially this is starting to come through, and people will start, if you're not already seeing it, you will start to see it. And it's not just public sector. So the big companies are starting to use the same kind of language and starting to write their own contracts in the same way. So this is, there's a number of reasons to engage with this, and some are very commercially focused.
So when you look at, as a local business community, you look at Morecambe and Lancaster, there's lots of groups, isn't there? Lots of ethical trading groups. There's lots of other kind of committees and festivals. And I think about Dan Knowles and some of the work he's done lately about understanding what technical and digital skills there is. There's almost something here for you in terms of on a local level, isn't it? To make sure that we're all supporting each other ethically, but also on a local level and supporting that local economy and maybe, I don't know, education, the new skills, like you say, that are coming in. So
so this
around this now, but it's important to understand that it's not just a pursuit that's reserved for large business. I think that's the misconception, isn't it?
No, and it's not just something that's kind of fluffy and nice either. I mean, we're talking about stuff that's nice to do here. It's a nice thing to do, but there's some actually quite commercial reasons for doing that. And it's okay. And this is what I'm kind of saying to people. It's okay to look at this from a business perspective. It doesn't mean that you're not doing good stuff and you don't care. It's okay to get that balance, because the balance is what will make it really work. So.
And maybe now we'll never, like you say, coming out of COVID, people are really understanding the value of that local approach as well, aren't they?
And it's, and another really interesting one for us around here is that, the Eden project is looking really quite likely. And the one thing about Eden is that they have very specific kind of practices around ethical and local procurement. So when they come up here, they're going to bring their values with them. So at the moment, all of their procurement is Cornwall focused because that's local to where the Eden project is down there. But when they come here, they're going to be looking at how they embed local procurement and ethical procurement into their supply chain. So there's another reason, as a very local reason to get involved with this kind of, this kind of stuff at the moment as well.
Brilliant. Okay. Shall we kick off?
Cool.
And then actually Dan Knowles is watching. Hello, Dan. And he's just,
hi, Dan. Hello.
got Kate Heathcote watching. We've got Rachel Kent watching. We've got Leslie Perrott and Taylor. A few others are watching too. And Dan's just said charity partnerships were integral to the commercial strategy of Lancaster on Ice. And of course, another kind of real success that people are involved in from a local point of view. So let's tell them how they
crack on. Right. Shall I crack on? So basically the reason I've got slides is just so, people can rewatch this, and there's information you've not got to, take massive notes in case I'm saying something that's of interest. So hold on, let me.
Right. We'll keep this on the page, and we'll share it on our other profiles. So, I'm very, very grateful to you for giving up your time and your expertise to do this, but people will be able to share this. If they're watching it now and they think it's of value, they can tag other people, they can share it on their profiles too, so that, we really do help a number of businesses, not just those necessarily that are watching at the moment. So
yeah, it is. It's about, kind of paying it forward, really. So I was going to have a chat about values, and then I was going to ask, and we're not necessarily going to get into a big discussion about this, but it's just to raise some questions that might be that start to get you thinking in this way. And then I'll do a little bit of techie stuff. We've touched on it really about what commercial drivers there might be, and then there's this really nice thing around understanding your sphere of influence, those things which are within your power to change, and those things that you might be flogging a dead horse to try and do something about, and then looking at the practical ways of really embedding your values and then talking about them. So really, taking it back to real fundamentals. And it's, from an individual level, our values are those principles that help us to decide what's right and wrong and how to act in various situations. It's not rocket science. It's quite interesting that societally we'll have shared values, and then we'll have some values that are very personal to us as well. And there isn't, I say there is no right and wrong. There obviously is right and wrong in terms of those wider, shared social norms to some extent. It's not okay to go out and hit somebody just because you might fancy it, that kind of thing. But generally, we're all individuals, and we'll all hold our own values. When those values are applied to an organization, they're generally the values that are around the health and well-being of the firm in the long run. They tend to be longer term things. You might hold a set of financial values which might be around ethical investment, for instance, and that's quite important to the business. And again, they'll be different to different businesses, to the areas that the businesses work in, to the locations. But I apologize that this slide is kind of quite busy, but I thought it was really useful to contextualize this stuff, because we start talking about social impact and it's very easy to kind of drill down into indicators and forget the big picture of why we're doing this. And at the moment in Lancaster and Morecambe, there's a big piece of work that's going on about community wealth. And I think that the vast majority of people watching this will not have the first clue of what community wealth really means. And what this slide is about is I'm just going to talk through how everything fits together. So businesses tend to talk about social impact. And social impact is the change that you're making by doing something. So it's very much related to actions. Social value is the relative importance of those actions. So it's essentially how much people actually find it useful. So just to give an example here. So the council builds a new bridge. So the ability to walk and cycle and drive over that bridge is the impact, but the value is how much people need it. So if everybody stands there and goes, well, there's a perfectly good bridge half a mile down the road that actually gets me from where I am to where I need to be much more easily than this road. You've created something that doesn't have a great deal of social value. And you can actually, and unless you understand what's important to people, you can actually waste quite a lot of time doing things and not adding much value. So does that make sense, Ruth?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing, and then you correct me if I'm wrong, really. So the social impact may be more of the action,
Yeah.
but the value will be the longevity of whatever it is you're going to do. Would that be a fair reflection?
So you could be operating a program that's around getting young people who are out of work back into work.
Yeah.
But if there's 3 other organisations doing similar stuff, or if there's actually not many young people that actually need to be supported back into work, you're not actually making much of a difference.
So this,
and in a world,
sorry,
so go on.
As I say, this makes sense for me because me and Dan have talked about, I'm going to just keep using Dan now. Me and Dan have talked about digital skills and the next batch of marketeers. So when we're too tired and we've had enough of our time, and what have we done as responsible business owners to look at more? I mean, there's some commercial aspects, where's your skills gap, and is anyone going to be around to be able to do that?
There's self-interest there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a bit of self-interest there. Yeah. But then there is a bit around who else is catering for that particular field of expertise or professionalism in this area. Lancaster Morecambe College are doing a little bit, some universities are doing a little bit. But actually, what could we do as an impact, but also as a long-term social value? Is it needed? Do people want it? As you've rightly said, which has got me thinking about it now. Yeah. But is there longevity in us doing that work? Will it bear fruit? And then will it benefit them, the area, and everything else? So I'm not sure whether I'm on the right track there.
It's absolutely, yeah. And you find that out by, yes, there's some data crunching. There's always a bit of data crunching there, but generally ask people. So the more that we do, the more that we understand what's important to people in this area, the more you can be kind of reassured that anything that you come up with is actually going to be useful rather than just something else that, and you see this quite a lot. I mean, how many times have we all seen something that the local authority's done or a business has done and gone, why have they done that when they could have done that?
Yeah.
And we do see it, and it's either, it can be big things, it can be small things, but you kind of just go, what? I don't get what that is. And that's an example of there's been a change, but there's no real value to it. So to come on to the next bit, which is where it gets, quite kind of contextual, is, I've said if they're relevant and they're done with people rather than for people, they build community wealth. And so they also build this thing called social capital. And yet social capital, and I've realised that I had some notes because I have to make myself notes for social capital. So social capital is about how people function together, and this can be good or bad or just a bit meh, and it depending on the relationships that people have in an area. A shared sense of identity, shared values, trust, cooperation, and communities that have a high social capital are those that work well together. There are less tensions, there's less antisocial behaviour, people get on well, there's less there's less disparity between haves and have-nots.
Okay.
Because people tend to pull together, and that's what we've been seeing in the last few weeks. These businesses and individuals coming together, and essentially that is building social capital. And so
Dan just asked a question of you. So he's just said, also he's agreed that he's also very tired. So.
And I know that this stuff is really new as well. Yeah.
but just asked the question here, which is just saying, it'd be interesting to know from your point of view, who do you think does social value well? Some brands that might be maybe recognised, probably more on a national level. But if we were looking to someone who's kind of got the kite mark of they're doing it well, who would you maybe say in your experience?
It's when you talk about social capital, it's those organisations that create a sense of community.
Is that cooperative type sense of agreement, or is it?
Yeah, I think there's some charities that operate very, very well, because that's essentially what charities are about, is around social capital. But I'm just thinking, take Strava, for instance, if people are familiar with Strava. So it's an app, and Strava is, for me, it's kind of pretty much the essence of building social capital. So whether you run or you bike, you basically, you have followers, and the idea is that people give you what they call, kudos, and it builds that sense of belonging. So as a commercial entity, because Strava exists to make money, but what they've done is they've very, very effectively built a community of thousands of people. The same with Parkrun. Parkrun's been going, I don't know, 15 years or so, but there's thousands upon thousands of people do Parkrun, and they turn up at 9 o'clock every morning. And there's one that goes down the prom now. There's one in Williamson Park, and there's one that goes down the prom. And the sense of belonging that you get. So essentially, any organisation, be it commercial or social purpose or public sector, that creates that sense of community and that sense of belonging. I think really, for me, that's about social capital.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, thank you.
And then we come finally to community wealth. So community wealth is where it all fits together. So, and community wealth is about much more than money. So it's about all those commonly shared things that are valued by people where they live and work. So all the things that we value as residents and employees in Lancaster and Morecambe that are important to us. And they can be both kind of physical, like infrastructure, or they can be quite perceptional. So it's also, community wealth is also about things like how safe you feel when you're walking home at night, when and it's that feeling of belonging to an area, being part of an area, being a valued member of that area. That's about safety and inclusion, how well you know your neighbours, how good the schools are. So it's quite intangible in many ways, which is why it's kind of it can be a bit like community wealth, what we're talking about, but it's about making the places that we care about and the people that we care about, is looking after them and being a place that we want to be and that we're proud of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm just thinking about how that might look at, if I looked at the consult centre as a business, and if I wanted to build a bit more than just so we do the support for local charities, very heavily tied with our RNLI and the Morecambe Bay Food Bank and things, but so something that I could do as a business owner in terms of some of this, but maybe that in their paid time, they're given time to go and then assist and volunteer in some of those organisations. So there's some action and sense of agency, not just necessarily we're chucking a load of donations. I mean, they're grateful for them, but something that is more that shared goal, sense of belonging, purpose, because it's a shared value amongst us. It's something that we would do and would be expressly kind of inherent, if you will, in everything that we do. Is it that kind of activity that could also build toward that community wealth?
It is, yeah. And the next slide that I've got is about asking those questions.
Right.
And so, we don't have to work through this, but if as a starting point, I would be asking individuals people, I'd be asking the individuals within the businesses that I work with to think about what they care about, because everybody cares about something. It's a fairly cold person who just goes, nah, meh.
Yeah.
So and it's what those places resonate. It might not be Lancaster and Morecambe. It might be where you were born, where your family live, where there might be quite specific people, both individuals and communities. And then most people have been touched by a cause. Whether, cancer care and the hospice are really good. They have incredible communities because they're people who've been touched by the illness. And along the way, they have developed as a community around that, and want to give back. So, and that's really lovely when that happens, that's born of being in, a very sad place, but such positivity can come out of it. It could be about your hobbies and activities that you care about. So I would say, a really good starting point is, because our values come from us as people, to start with what you care about as a person, and then also think about what you do to show you care. And and don't worry, it might be that you're kind of there going, oh, I'm not sure I really do that much. This isn't a kind of, there's no name and shame to this, but it's just thinking about, well, because I think that when people actually sit down and actually start to think about it, it's like, well, actually, yeah, I do give a regular donation, and, because I care about that particular charity, or I'm really, I go and I volunteer my time at my child's swimming club, that kind of thing. There's a few old people down my street, and I just kind of keep an eye out for them, because it starts to build, well, you're already doing this as an individual. And then we take that one step further and say, well, what has this got to do with work? So how do we translate those personal values into something that our organisation can do? And there are ways and means, but starting with what you care about is the first point in this. And we talked about this, the social impact methodology and the Social Value Act and the commercial drivers. But the one phrase that I really liked is, there's guidance, there's an ISO guidance on social responsibility, and there's just this quote from within it, that it's essentially about the relationship between an organisation, its stakeholders. So stakeholders are all those people that you interact with, clients and suppliers, and anybody else, and their families, and your local community. So anybody else who touches upon your organisation and on your sphere of influence. So what you can actually do to influence that relationship. Are you still with me?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking now, because of so Nicola of Morecambe Bay Wills and Estates is also watching, and she's just said, absolutely agree. I support cancer care because, sorry for that, I support cancer care because I've had personal experience, but I'm always amazed at what they do in the community, particularly in the COVID situation, helping key workers. And so that's probably and I know personally that Nicola donates, both as a business and personally, an aspect of her revenues every month into cancer care to show her support for something that's very important. So I suppose what you're just saying there is perfectly demonstrated by something that is very personally dear to Nicola. She has translated into her business following that same donating and supportive path.
And if I'm not wrong, Nicola, do you give time as well? Do you give your time to write people's wills for them?
Yeah, she probably will answer in a second, a bit of a delay.
Yeah, but you see, that is classic social impact. So social impact coming through as a methodology is not about business donation. That's quite classic corporate responsibility. So the difference between social impact, we weren't really going to talk about this, but the difference between social impact and corporate responsibility is that corporate responsibility has traditionally been, you run your business, and if your business does well, you may choose to give some money to something good that you care about. It's not fundamental to the way that you run your business.
Yeah.
Social impact is actually fundamental to the way that you do business. So it's about how you're buying things locally, how you're supporting local charities through those processes, how you're sharing your skills. It's that kind of thing. So it's just a shift, and it's just getting used to that, really.
And you're right, Nicola just said, yes, absolutely, she does. So
yeah, I thought you did. So yeah, I mean that's brilliant, because that's like the best thing that you can do, because it's giving your time, your expertise to people who need it. So talking about this sphere of influence, and I think, Nicola, your example is a great one, because if you've an owner managed business, your business is probably going to care about what you care about because you're running your business, and there's not a great deal of disconnect. But there's also going to be things that are relevant to your business as well, that your business might care about relating to the kind of activity that you deliver. And I was going to Lingwood, if people know Lingwood, they're based down at Heysham and they're a security management firm and they're fantastic. And I've been doing some work with them and they very kindly agreed for me to use them as a case study. But just to make this a little bit less theoretical and a bit more practical. So essentially Lingwood kind of said, oh, we've got some clients that are starting to ask us about what we're doing with social impact. And we're not quite sure what all this terminology is about. And so we sat with them and we considered what the individuals within the business cared about, you know, in the process that that I've just gone through about thinking about what's important. You know, this local area is really important because the business and the family are based here. But we also looked at what was important for the business and what was important for the clients as well. So, and what came out of this was a plan of things that could be embedded within business activities that related both to the business activity, but were also things that the people within that business cared about. So, for instance, Lingwood deliver some NHS contracts. And part of that is the NHS bedwatch service for older people. And so what they're finding is that the staff are working with older people, some of whom are experiencing dementia. So what we decided was that all of the staff should have dementia or would commit to doing the Dementia Friends training. Now it's not epic. It's you know, it's a free resource, and but what that does is that it upskills the staff that are delivering that service because they have greater understanding, business benefit. It says to the client, we're actually really committed to this, business benefit, but it's also building social capital, as we were talking about, because you're creating a whole bunch of people who understand how to support somebody with dementia. And they take that as a person out into your local community.
Yeah.
So, and we did the same. So they also deliver railway contracts, and very sadly, suicide is a really big issue for the railways. Lots of people choose to take their lives, unfortunately, by jumping in front of trains, which is traumatic for everybody involved. And so what we said was that everyone within the organisation, as part of their induction process, will do suicide awareness training. So again, for the client, that's fantastic. For the staff, it's increasing their confidence in those situations and upskilling them. But it's also building social capital because it's just that many more people that are able to say, I feel comfortable about having a conversation if somebody's thinking about taking their own lives.
And so, that's longevity, isn't it? That's almost a skill that is, as you rightly say, both being able to be applied in their professional lives, but also in the personal lives. And then who do we know that they may not influence with telling the friends, telling the family, and that greater awareness of may not be to the same level of training, but just the awareness would be a benefit, wouldn't it, in that?
And the business, they already cared about it. It's just they just needed those structures. Yeah. And also that, you know, so my background is in social stuff. So I know about Dementia Friends training and I know about suicide awareness training. And, you know, so I can kind of just sit there and go, why don't you think about this? And let's have a look at your HR processes and work out how we can do this really as simply as possible without it creating a lot more work, you know, because I could have said, I'll get all your staff and we'll do a day's training on suicide awareness, which a few providers would say. But the reality is you can't take everybody off the job for a day because the cost to the business would be significant. So it's like, well, actually, there's this online training and I've looked at it and I think it's good. And actually, let's just do this within your induction and within your line management. And you have meetings every so often anyway. And let's say within the next year, you're going to say all your staff have been through it. you know, so it's looking at, it's doing it practically, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the big one is what came out really strongly was two of the really key values for Lingwood are around culture and respect, and it's really strong for them. And what we said was there is a brilliant refugee charity that operates in Lancaster and Morecambe called Global Link, and it was we've match made essentially. So Lingwood and Global Link are developing a partnership to offer work experience for refugees, because the work profile is a really good fit for members of refugee communities. They want to work. What we're finding is these communities are very isolated from our communities. You know, they're being placed here by central government, and what's really important is we support these communities, these individuals, to become active members of our community. And so it was a really good fit. If we can get the logistics to work, to offer work experience and hopefully employment to members of these of refugees communities, and asylum seekers can do work experience, they can't be employed. It's such a good fit. And from a social impact, we're not talking about indicators, but that is an incredibly strong thing from a commercial perspective to be able to say to clients, this is our social impact. So, but they're all unique to Lingwood because that's what they care about, and that's what their market is. And so
they have to care about them, don't they, to make sure they remain embedded, but also to make sure that it doesn't, you know, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it just doesn't fizzle away. So if it really matters to them personally, that you're going to stay more committed, aren't you, to continuing to deliver that through?
Yeah. And this, you know, this is where I talk about that when you start to see stuff coming through procurement, you can feel like you're having stuff imposed on you. And the reality is that's not the way that it should work. It's taking this time now to say what's important to me. And how does it fit within, you know, it's getting that balance, isn't it? What's important to me? What does a client want potentially? Let's come up with something that's a balanced approach that we care about, that's deliverable as well, because there'll be some stuff that you go, oh God, I've got to do that. And it's like, I don't know how to, and it doesn't really fit with the organization. And, you know, it kind of just slides away, doesn't it? Whereas if you start with something that really fits with what you care about, you're so much more likely to try your best to do it. And that's all you can ever ask, is for someone to try their best. So
yeah, absolutely. And from your point of view then, you know, when you're going in to do this work, what do you think has been, not so much the driver, because I think we've established that suddenly they kind of go, oh, actually we need to do this, but what do you find is the biggest misconception and also the biggest barrier to getting it done and underway, do you think?
There's quite a few. So I've spent quite a long time talking to businesses, and so when you start talking about social impact, nobody knows what it is. So a lot of businesses have heard of corporate responsibility, but as I said, there's that perception that is, oh yeah, we support charity. It's like, fantastic. And I think what's really important for me to say is, don't stop supporting charities just because we're now talking about social impact. It's important that the two, you know, charities are very, very, very dependent on giving, but what I'm interested in is long-term charity partnerships that benefit both sides. So yeah, there's total misconceptions about terminology because it's new. There's so many different terms out there, and that doesn't help. And really, because it's new, it's just, I think a lot of businesses can get quite scared of it, because particularly when you start looking at indicators and things. So if the first time that you've come across social impact is when you're answering a tender document, I can't imagine that's a pleasant experience particularly. So this is what I'm trying to say is, let's just think about this. So by the time you get to that point, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a pleasurable experience on tender document begin
Yeah.
the same sentence anyway.
Some people like doing them. Some people actually do them as a profession, you know.
Good for them. But I think I think you're right. Well, in terms of, and I don't mean this when I say it's a copy paste job, because that makes it sound like we're getting it from anywhere. But what you suppose you're saying is that groundwork of care, that groundwork of it mattering, has already taken place. So answering those aspects of a tender document, or getting on somebody's preferred supplier list, which is another aspect, isn't it? Isn't quite as fear-inducing, I suppose, as it could be. And as you say, it's going to become more and more of a requirement now.
Now, there are, I mean, I'd not put them into this presentation. I'm doing a presentation tomorrow just about social impact indicators, and it's incredibly technical. But, you know, when you see social impact coming through a tender, that is talking about local additional delivery within that tender activity. But what I'm saying is, if you set this up in your local area, and then, so you set this up in Lancaster, Morecambe, and then you go for a piece of work, I don't know, in Newcastle, to some extent, you can just replicate that because you're already doing it. You know what you're doing, and you take it to Newcastle. What you need, you can't just do that. You've got to make sure that, when we're talking about social value,
yeah,
you need to make sure it's valuable for what's needed in Newcastle.
Yeah.
But to be honest, there's an awful lot of overlap there. So it's unlikely that you would be doing something where wherever you were looking to replicate that activity, you went, no, we don't need that. But it's that level of understanding, really. But yeah, if it's values driven, then it's sustainable.
And what would you suggest? Because I'm just thinking now around if people are a reasonably small business or an owner operator.
Yeah.
Has it ever been known to you where maybe 4 or 5 businesses kind of almost get together to adopt a collective? I mean, wouldn't that just be great if you could think?
I think that is a fantastic idea, and this is something that I am an anorak, and I hold my hand up and admit that I'm an anorak, and I spend lots of time with big pieces of paper drawing models of how to save the world. In my head, it's such a simple thing. I just need to start wearing underpants over my jeans. But yeah, but it is. Fashion, great. But essentially, that concept of so the bit that I really like about this, as I said at the beginning, is about that bringing together social purpose organizations. So by that I mean charities, social enterprises, community groups that exist for a social or environmental purpose with businesses. And they're not massive, they talk different languages. We talk different languages, and we have this perception that we are different animals, but actually we're all people. And, there isn't that much difference. We just need to understand how to come together and to create those long-term partnerships. So it's not just giving a charity a check is incredibly useful, but saying to a charity, we would like to work with you for the next 3 years, and we can offer this in terms of skills development. So for instance, having run a few charities, small charities, HR, legal, financial, marketing, because as with SMEs, you're a bit of a jack of all trades. And so, but I used to have my corporate supporters would come to me and I would go, can I borrow your HR person every so often? Because, and it's great for their CPD as well. So if you've got kind of like, say, a junior HR person, or, in terms of smaller businesses, think about what your skill set is. And I think this next slide is that conversation, really, to say, think about what you do, think about what you're good at, because actually the chances are somebody would find that really useful. So, you know, what professional skills have you got? So taking Nicola again as an example, that willingness to go in and be that professional person and give your expertise is absolutely invaluable. And for a lot of us, you know, like back in the day, my qualifications were in marketing, you know, and I write well and I just do it and I don't really think anything of it. And then every so often, you know, somebody will go, oh God, could you do that? You know, and it's like, yeah, of course I can. But I don't think about it because it's just something that I do. You know, when you start to actually map your skills and abilities, people have got such amazing capacities to you know, to offer that out. You know, in terms of anything that you've got, you know, vans, even photocopiers,
Yeah.
you know, like if you've got a colour photocopier, I'm sure that there are a number of small charities that would go, oh my God, you know, like really? Could we just come?
There definitely are, because we throw loads through. But you're right, because they'll come to us and say, oh, we've got to do these posters. We're not, you know, either that, they have to pay for a printer. So we get that done for us. And I know that, for example, Tanya and Annabelle at TP Financial, they help out, they give their financial skills to local charities, their time and financial skills. So yeah, you're right. There are some very practical applications that we can give that aren't necessarily monetary, but actually they could save or generate money as a result of the time and the expertise, but from a different place. It's coming from a different place, isn't it?
And so going back to your original question of a number of small businesses coming together, creating a partnership with a couple of charities that resonate, that are offering a service that really resonates with what they care about, and developing that relationship where the charity can say, just pick up the phone and say, I don't suppose there's any, you know, you haven't got this, have you? Because that's about relationships, about trust, isn't it? And communication and not being scared to make an ask. And in return, that charity can be helping you fulfill some social impact requirements that have been set through a contract, or, you know, or just generally in terms of communication. There's so much opportunity from a marketing and communications perspective, because you're promoting the charity as well. So even though you're promoting your own business, it's not hard-nosed, because you're also promoting all the good stuff that the charity does. So it's about being less British to some extent. You know, we can be very British, can't we? We don't really talk about it. We don't like to talk about things, you know, and actually it's like, let's start shouting about this, because it's benefiting everybody, really.
Yeah.
And as long as your ethics are right and your values are right, it's not greenwash. It's not, you know, this idea of saying you're doing stuff and you're not. As long as you're actually doing it, talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. And it really, you know, what you've just talked about there is I'm very hopeful. Mr. Lingwood's watching. Mr. Lingwood, you've missed us. We were just best review ever about your business. We both deserve a beer from you later. It kind of demystifies, doesn't it? Because actually most people would see that page, that section, and think, and just get filled with horror. But actually, it's just about really distilling down what can be done practically, what you're probably already doing some of already. Yeah. And like you say, making that very much a system rather than just a thing, an ad hoc that people do.
Yeah. It is the demystifying it. And, you know, you're saying what are the biggest challenges that I face is that, you know, businesses just being a little bit kind of like, oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. And it's actually, well, you're already doing it. You'll already be doing it to some extent, but let's put a structure behind it, and then you can evidence that you're doing it, and you can measure it as well.
Those documents and things that they need as part of your consultancy or your service or advice, that's part of what you will do then, presumably. So you'll almost interpret what that business tells you and create that system, that process, that documentation that says, okay, I've taken your wants, your needs, your concerns, your personal drivers, and we've created something that is packaged, ready, and can be communicated.
And we may just make it as simple as possible. And depending on why people are talking to me. So there's a film company called Land and Sky that I've been working with, and they're a very small company, but they want to position themselves within a particular market, which is around social commentary. They want to make films around social commentary. And so we had a conversation about what their values were and the things that, we just talked about what they could start doing, how they could start talking about it. And that naturally kind of evolved. It was really interesting conversations because it evolved into some of their market development. And I don't do kind of business strategy as such, but because of what they wanted to get into, it was quite fascinating that we started even talking about business development. But one thing that's come out of that, again, just thinking about that skill. So they're a film company. They're really interested in environmental stuff. So thinking about climate change, I hooked them up with an environmental organizer, a local environmental organization, and suggested that they might want to do a film for that organization about peat sequestration, because then that charity can use that video to promote their work around peat. Peat absorbs carbon dioxide. It's absolutely amazing. And around here, we have got some amazing peatland that they're trying to restore because it's been drained over years because of grouse shooting and stuff like that. So they're trying to build it back because the impact for the environment will be significant because all this carbon will be absorbed over time. So it's an amazing project. But it was just, and for that company, it just clicked. Because it was like, oh, we can do that because we've got all the kit because we're a film company. So actually, it doesn't cost us a great deal other than our time, but actually the social impact and us being able to say that we've done it, is really significant. So it's just thinking creatively. There's nothing difficult about this.
But it's having the space and time and someone to challenge you and ask you the questions as you're going to do, to think that little bit wider and more creatively. And then once you've done that, think, well, that's great. I've got a whiteboard full of notes now. What do I do with it? And that's, I suppose, where your expertise is going to come in to assist taking it from conception to actual delivery, isn't it?
I've got, I won't cover this slide because of time, but it's just slightly more technical. But these are the kind of themes that are within social impact. A lot of public sector are using the themes, outcomes and measures, and it's around skills and employment. It's around regional responsible business. So that's about local supply chain, as you mentioned, Ruth, how much we can support each other, sustainable procurement. Safer and more resilient communities is around supporting charities with that kind of skills, exactly the stuff that we've been talking about. There are some environmental indicators as well. And social innovation is quite a bit of an intangible one, but it's about creating what we've seen, as we were saying about recent months, we've seen social innovation. We've seen businesses swap production to hand gel, to hand sanitizer. That's kind of social innovation. It's just going, we have the flexibility to be able to do that, and we are solving a social, supplying a social need at the moment, but still making money.
Kate's just commented, Kate Heathcote's watching, she just said, it's been so helpful, Claire, as I'm starting a new business and I can build some similar ideas into my own business from the start.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's been helpful. So, yeah, it's just not being scared to try stuff and there's no wrong really. People ask me all the time about, oh, should I do this and should I do that? And it's like, well, the typical one is, say organic or local food. Is it more important to buy local food, or is it more important to buy organic food? It's like, well, the answer to that is obviously locally sourced organic. But if you're in December and your organic tomato, there's the whole seasonality thing as well. But actually, it's about what's more important to you. Is it around organic production and biodiversity and chemicals, or is it about the amount of time and carbon that driving things and flying things across the world. And there's no right or wrong. It just depends what you hold as a higher value. And it's like that for anything, really. And if you then articulate that and say, this is why, you've evidenced that you've considered it and you've made a choice. And nobody can criticize that, because, you know.
Yeah, it makes more. I think it's very helpful to go through this, because I think it, like I say, it's probably helped people, certainly helped me take it from being this big thing to being something that is tangible and you can understand it in terms of actually what could I as a business do differently, you know, because we don't do badly, but actually thinking about this, you know, if I was really congruent about it, there's a load of other things that we could do that is more around our time and expertise to create that value, as you talk about, not necessarily just an impact, but a long lasting, hopefully beneficial value.
And then, you know, I mean, this is my last slide, really, and it's talking about it, because again, people are already doing stuff, but we don't talk about it. So going back to that kind of, you know, being reserved and British is actually, it's only a good thing to talk about it. It's not blowing your own trumpet. It's about saying, you know, particularly if you present it in the way, this is the social issue and this is what our company is doing to address it. Because you're not just bigging yourself up, you're saying, actually, for us locally, for instance, young people's educational attainment is a significant concern. And therefore, we've decided that we're going to go in and we're going to give staff time to do careers advice for students, or we're going to do mock interviews, or we're going to do this. And this is where, again, your partnerships with local charities is quite important, because you can't just go and do that as a business. I mean, to some extent, you can ring a school and say, oh, we'd like to come in and talk to the kids. Some schools will have the capacity to go, yes, we've got a program, we've got somebody who does that, I'll put you on to them. A lot of schools will go, right, thank you. But there's also lots of programs around that will, you know, will facilitate that for you. So you're making it easy. So you don't have to spend a load of time on the phone. They'll coordinate it for you. So it's even easier, you know. It's just about knowing what's going on, really.
So how, you know, there's people watching this and you know, now understanding that this is not reserved for just big business, and they want to be able to have those conversations with you just to explore what you may be able to help them with, but they're bothered about budget and cost and everything else. What is there a way in which they can have a half an hour with you and you can just chat through some initial ideas, or how would that work, and how would people contact you?
So my details are there. I would say do connect with me on LinkedIn. I've also got the shared value businesses on LinkedIn, and I blog regularly. I'll blog once a week. And so there's a load of blogs there that are just designed, you know, little 2-minute videos about topics like flexible working, or attracting, you know, recruiting millennials, or, you know, there's stuff like that. So there's loads of information there. So I would say check that out. And yeah, I mean, just get in touch. I'm always happy to have a chat, you know, if people just want pointers. And as I say, I am in the process of developing some online training as well. So we'll do it. So it would be interesting to know if there's something that you've heard about that kind of resonated, that you'd like a bit more information about, let me know, because, you know, I'm kind of coming up with a whole load of topics that we can talk about, because this is quite big stuff. And I think some of the stuff that I'd like to cover is understanding social need. You know, when we talk about that social value, what is it that is important to people? What is it in Lancaster and Morecambe that's of particular need to this locality? And I've just joined Lancaster CVS as a trustee as well, which is great, because CVS is the infrastructure organisation that supports the charity sector in Lancaster district. So they're really good with knowing what's going on, who needs support, which charities are doing what, which for me is great, you know, because it means that technically I can be on it in terms of knowing, you know, whatever it is people want to support. I'll probably know a man who knows a man, or a girl who knows a girl, or dog or whatever, you know.
Yeah, the social value matchmaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I did a session last week with you, Clan, and in the chat there was a lady who was running a charity, and there was a guy, the lady who was running her own business as well. And they and this lady said, "Oh, can I give money to charity? Does that count?" I said, "I'm really sorry." I said, "But you could go and volunteer with this lady here." And they were like, "Oh, let's talk." And I'm like, "Oh, that makes me feel so good." I was like, I messaged both of them. I was like, "You've made me very happy." Nothing else comes out of this. I've match made, you know, an advocacy service with a corporate supporter.
My work here is done. Thank you.
Absolutely. I shall pull up my underpants and leave. Yeah.
Well, that has been really, really helpful. Is there anything that you want to say that maybe we haven't given opportunity for you to talk about or cover off? Or are you happy?
Not really. It'd be nice to know if there's people still on it, whether, you know, has it been useful, or
there are some people still on. So yes, we would like to see some thumbs up, because there's a slight delay between us chatting and them hearing that messaging. So some thumbs up, or even if it has been useful, if you could comment below for us and just let us know, then that'd be really helpful. And maybe what might be good is after this session, like I said, we'd probably share those details and maybe your LinkedIn profile link as well. Yeah, there's loads of hearts and likes going on. So
cheers.
Yeah. So maybe to pop on and just put the LinkedIn profile on there, and so that people do know and they can go and have a look at those blogs and those videos and stuff. Nicola has said, "Thank you, Claire. Really interesting and thought-provoking. More to do as always." Wow. Well, Nicola does a load already. So
I know. So yeah.
Thank you, Nicola, for that. Well, look, there you go. So
right, thank you.
It wasn't that nerve-wracking. You broadcast live on Facebook. You handled it like a total pro. Really well. And somebody's probably rung Lingy and said, "There's 2 women on Facebook
talking about you."
I'm going on to find out what that is.
And if he didn't know anything about that, he can just blame Summer, because Summer said it was fine.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much. And I certainly do hope people do contact you, Claire, as a result of that. And please let us know when that training's available, and we'll make sure that, you know, we come back on and share that as well to people that are watching. That's really been helpful for us. So thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Grab
been fun.
The last couple of rays of sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few rays. Oh, there's people on the beach and everything. I'm going to run out there and see if I can grab a bit of last little few rays of sunshine.
Get an ice cream or something. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to admit that already.
Right, thanks, Ruth. Anyway, cheers, everybody. Thank you very
much for your time and your expertise. It's been really, really.
No worries. Okay, bye.
Bye.